All right, Peter, we are recording again. Good to see you again.
How you doing, my friend?
How you been?
Always glad to see you.
You too, as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've just finished listening to one of the CDs containing the theremin music. I'm sure you're familiar with that music instrument, or instead it's called theremin box. Yeah,
I'm not familiar with that. No.
Well, it's been invented by Lab Theremin in 1928, and it's been officially patented in New York City in the American Patent Bureau. So it's the instrument that you actually don't use your fingers in order to play. You don't touch it. I mean, you use it, but you enter the electromagnetic field, and by the mediation of your fingers, you can, achieve certain tonalities or certain tones, even the colorature, la coloratura, even you can, modify it in order to resemble on a soprano or anything else. So, various people play it. Lennon played the Skylar, the Russian composition on it, and my ex-girlfriend was an American. She played it, the theremin box, and it's a very interesting thing that after he immigrated into the U.S., actually he never met Tesla, although they both living in the same city.
So they're both in New York City? Were they both in New York City?
He lived in New York City, and many musicians have included the sound of theremin box or theremin into their live shows or their CDs or vinyls, like Tom Waits or many other ones, So I've just finished one of the CDs and listening.
I'd like to learn. I'd love to learn more about it. Yeah.
Yeah, those were the classical music arrangements for that instrument.
Cool. So Peter, I guess maybe before we get too far into it, just in case anybody's new to our channel, we should probably introduce ourselves. It's always probably a good idea. My name's Luke Angstadt. Our channel here, I'm a host with Peter here. Of the channel is the business of esoteric knowledge and wisdom. I'm also an author. I have a book titled The Musings of De La Pew. It's a study about the nature of reality, the nature of God, human beings, and how all three of those are interrelated. It's available at Amazon. Again, the title is The Musings of De La Pew. I'm going to have Peter introduce himself a little bit and tell us about the books that he has on Amazon as well. And then we'll do a little recap of where we were talking. We were talking about simulation theory before we left off, or when we finished our previous episode. And then we'll kind of use that as a segue into the next topic today. So Peter, I'll throw it over to you and introduce yourself and go from there.
Hey, I am Peter Rozovic, originally Polish. I'm also the author and co-author and the manager of our books on Amazon. I have 3 of them, which make the part of series that are entitled Nikola Tesla Third Reich and the Extraterrestrials, The Culture and the Mythologies of Techno World, and all of them are available and purchasable by a simple click. So go for it. Nothing else to say. We're gonna make the first million.
Yes. I agree.
Because
we're gonna get there one way or the other. We're gonna figure out the algorithm on YouTube, and people are gonna be watching us in droves. Yeah.
The algorithm of the further purchasing, right?
That as well. So the algorithm on Amazon, the one that I wholeheartly agree. Definitely.
Well, the only thing to do is to reach out to people's consciousness.
And that's what we're doing here.
Psyche.
That's what we're doing here.
Yeah, that's what everybody does. Like exactly like Frank Zappa says, we're all here just because of the money. Yeah. He was a smart one.
He absolutely was. Yeah, and he made no bones about it. Yeah, he didn't beat around the bush. So I guess I'll let our audience know where we left off last time. We were talking about simulation theory and just asking the question of whether or not we live in a simulation. And as the story goes from the the advent of the first simulation game of Pong in the 1970s, where two sticks were hitting a ball back and forth, we've come to a point where, we have virtual reality arcades that are approaching the point where they are going to be indistinguishable from everyday reality. So it's really not a question of if we'll ever get to a point where we are capable of creating artificial worlds that are indistinguishable from what we perceive as everyday reality. It's just really a question of when that happens. And that's where we left off last time. And Peter, I got the sense and through our Facebook conversation that you felt that there was a natural segue into alchemy. You sent me a link about alchemy, and all I really know about alchemy, Peter, is that it's a way of transforming one material into something else by either mysterious or magical means. And I also know, like in the Middle Ages, there was a lot of interest in turning base metals into gold. But beyond that, I don't know much about alchemy. And I noticed that you see how it also ties into Nikola Tesla's work. So with no further ado, if you feel like that's a natural segue in the conversation, I'd love to go there from here. I would.
Yeah, because this is the channel which covers up various subjects, like from technology to philosophy, and also the alchemy and the occult ideas, because they stand behind the entire concepts of techno worlds, and your book does covers up the same topics. So yeah, I think it's worthy of mentioning here also. So the greatest achievement in the realm of alchemy was the so-called opera magna. That's the great achievement, the great deed in Latin. And that's the final and ultimate transmutation of the bodily system of an alchemist into pure light. And that has been described in Ramon Lull's great book, which is also available on Amazon. And I have one of the two of the previous earliest older editions of that book. So he was a Catalan esotericist and occult connoisseur and practitioner, and deeply devoted and rooted into the occult, the secret teachings of all time, like it's been later described by Manly Palmer Hall, a Canadian. And so, his life stream, his incarnation that we know about is very interesting and compounded of several elements. I think we would be able to cover it up within one show. But let me say to our audience that it's not only and exclusively about turning the elements into gold. Okay, they were able to maintain their daily lives because they were solely capable to focus on the great achievement and the great deed, because they weren't having to often struggle with the daily issues, like the money lack or deprivation of anything else. So for example, Count of Saint Germain has bought one entire street in Paris, namely in suburbia, a little bit more towards Saint-Denis. So, and why did he do that? Because he was financially able to, namely he was really doing what's called the Philosopher's Stone. That's roughly speaking, changing the inner arithmetics of the elements of the particular matter into gold. Why is that possible? Because each one of the elements is consisted of each one of the particular items is consisted of certain chemical elements that we see in the periodic system. Each one of them has its atomic weight, strictly speaking, and molecular specifications and so on. So it ain't that impossible to switch their positions and to turn, copper or any other one which is attainable and which corresponds with gold into pure gold.
That's a question, Peter. Peter, that's a question I wanted to ask. Does there have to be a proximity to gold on the periodic table? Like, are there certain elements that are kind of ruled out of hand that you can't even work with? Or, I mean, like as you mentioned, copper.
I for this moment at least, I vividly.
I guess what I'm saying, Peter, is like if I had like a handful of dirt, is there any way that I could take a handful of dirt and turn it into gold?
Well, I haven't been trying that yet, but I think that it has to be a metal at least.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think that the elements that the air is consisted of could be turned and transformed into gold. In certain amounts, yes, but I think it has to be the metal structure. The certain position in the periodic table. So yeah. And I was first the acquaintance, and then later on a very good friend, and even the godfather of several people who were personally doing the alchemy, who were doing those things in their private lives. For example, my godfather was doing that for many years. The later 10 years, let's say, because when you're younger, and he's 70 now, you do the other things. You occupy by different things. You have to raise up your daughter. You have to go to the lecture. You have to travel. Earn the money, and finally, when you're retired and settled down, you are able to experiment when you cross after 60. So I'm not 60. Maybe I'm mentally 60, but I was kind of introduced to those things, and those things function for real. So, but there are three main directions speaking about the alchemy. First one is the highest level. That's the opera magna, the highest achievement, when the whole bodily system of an alchemist transforms into pure light.
Now, Peter, when you mentioned that this function is real. So, or by that statement, do you mean that? So have you seen this? Have you seen it? Have you seen successful cases of alchemy where things are turned into gold or being turned into pure light? So that's incredible.
In certain smaller amounts, I've seen. Yeah. The way I was allowed to see. Yes. Certain smaller amounts. Yes. I've seen. It's a long process, but I've seen. The consequences of it, not the whole process, but I've seen it's not a fraud, really. And I'm not the only one. There are people who are, not the dabblers, but bigger connoisseurs, so they are introduced from time to time. They are allowed to enter the houses where the things are happening, like some people can enter in the places where people make the distillation of heroin or alcohol or schnapps or anything else. So, depending on who you personally know. And I was lucky, but I wasn't only lucky because I was searching for those people. I was introducing myself to the topics of occult and esotericism since I was really young, and I was creating the events in the mental fields. I was kind of inviting those people and knocking them out of the hook, and I was knocked out of the hook as well. So I was approaching them, and I was earning their trust because I was trustworthy, I guess. So they allowed me to see their libraries and so on. So okay, I just want to say that that's the highest level, the opera magna. That
and Peter, just to recap that the opera magna is turning like a corporal being like us into pure bodies of light. Am I a fair summarization?
Because nevertheless, it is consistent of pure light. each cell of our bodily system and each histomaterial functions in a certain vibration, right? The vibratory level. Even the very food that we enter in our bodies, it's tautologically stupid to explain, but for the esophagus and so on, it enters into the cells. So there is the enzyme that makes the cell walls semi permeable, propulsive. So
Peter, it almost sounds like this is a process that most people go through when they have like near-death life experiences, and like where they see the light. And it almost sounds like what we're doing here with alchemy might be uncovering the mystery and the unknown, and ergo the fear associated with death, by understanding the processes by which people what people experience when they're dying. I mean, and because death is not the end; it's just a doorway into our next incarnation, or it's just a doorway into the next path of our journey through eternity. So it almost sounds, I mean, by alchemy allowing a corporal sentient being to become a body of light, it's almost unveiling the mystery that is surrounding death. And by unveiling the mystery surrounding death, it's removing the fear associated with death. Because it sounds to me from what you're telling me and my recollection of people's stories of near death, where oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes there is an association with light, just this super abundance of light, that the alchemists were actually working to remove that mystery and therefore the fear associated with death. Is that a fair summarization as well, or am I kind of extrapolating in a wildly speculative fashion? But it sounds to me that that's what they're doing, is that they're taking away the mystery, and by taking away the mystery, the fear is gone as well.
Well, yeah, they're getting into, into wider and greater knowledge every day, particularly. And the science with the capitalized S is nowadays doing the pure alchemical process, meaning what was the task and duty of the alchemists, the bearers of the great secret, that is the duty and task to be achieved by science. So the same thing that we're doing with the telomerization process, preventing the telomeres to get shortened, and thus to shorten the human life esteem. That's the pure alchemical process. And the whole things with nanotechnology, that's the application of the occult and esoteric ideas, deeply alchemic in their core, into the field of science. So we are kind of achieving the dream goal and the aim of the humanity of each human being. I'm convinced of that, and you are as well, which is immortality. And the erasure of the necessity of three greatest foes, namely the death, the illness, and aging, because they're mutually interconnected. And the Tibetan adepts, who were deeply devoted, the connoisseurs of the esoteric practices, they knew how to make the great alchemical transmutation of their bodily materials and their histo materials, like the liver or brain or heart. And practically, by usage of certain techniques, they were really able to prolong their deaths, and even to delay and to postpone the moment of death, or even to erase it, because their bodily cells were, by constant usage of certain elements in a certain way of life, and a certain location where they were living and where they still do, their body cells were uplifted in a higher vibrational level, now vibratory level. So on that level, your body is really able to sustain, to endure, and to practically be, fed and kept in a position where the necessity of the separation from it, meaning the death, is practically erased. And I want to say here that one of the biggest secrets of the Tibetans, not necessarily the Muslims, but Tibetans and the Himalaya dwellers, is the vermilion usage. It's the cinnabar, or whatever it's called. In America, in the U.S., we call it the vermilion. It's the mercury sulfide. I guess it's MESL4 or 3 or something. I have to check it out later. So the mixture, I'm unveiling a really big secret here. The mixture of certain amounts of the vermilion, and small and trace amounts first, with a certain kind of food, and when you blend it with water in a pot, in a bowl, and when you enter it into your organism under the certain lunar circumstances and certain periods of your life, it will be a poison in normal situations, but it mixed with the other elements, it creates a certain chemical or alchemical base for attaining and achieving the certain effects in your body. So they first use it twice a year under certain lunar circumstances. So the second year, the year after, they emphasize that, and they amplify the whole quantity of the mixture. So they're able to use it in small doses, but more frequently, and their body system becomes resilient, because it has earned certain resistance to it. So they kind of enter the bigger quantities of vermilion mixed with other things into the organism. So, and when that is done correctly, when you include the fresh air on the Himalayas, and a certain nutrition and certain water that they enter in their body each day, when you mix that with the final things of mantras and chants that they use, I am saying here that it is possible, if anybody wants that, to prolong human life and to achieve the incomprehensibly bigger amounts of years, practically to make the conservation of the human bodily system. So nowadays you have people who live 150, 200, 250, 300, even to 500 or 600 years who are still alive, but you don't see them because they're hidden from they're not the main media, superstars. They're not exposed. They're hidden for the publicity, of course, because they want to insist to maintain their hidden way of life. But what I'm telling you here is truth, and people who don't live on the Himalayas, they know that because they got the right information, like I do. I haven't been to the Himalayas yet, but I'm having a plan to make a trip to over there because this situation is over. So we have, let's make me the conclusion. You have the highest spiritual level, which is opera magna. You have the lesser, more material level, which means turning the elements into gold. for the purpose of making wealth and fortune, making the life easier sometimes. And you have the third one, which is the preservation of the human bodily system for the entire ages, incomprehensibly longer than an average human being's life is.
How long? How long of a period are we talking, Peter? Are we talking thousands of years, or for as long as any individual wants to extend their present incarnation? What are we talking? What kind of time frame are we talking about?
Well, potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Potentially, yes, because if you don't suffer from any harm or injury from beyond, if you are not your biggest foe, if you're not surrounded by the environment who's constantly polluted, like we have in LA or New York City or any other bigger city, or Belgrade, for example. While I was living there, it was a disaster. It was impossible to breathe properly. So, or Berlin or Tokyo. If you're kind of disconnected, if you're translocated to another place where you have the air, food, and the soil conditions that are proper, and if you do the things that I've just mentioned, and those things are known for a really small amount of people now, we're widening it. I mean, yes, the answer is yes. You can preserve your body system for the practically, the entirety. I mean, you can't erase the conditions that can lead you to what's called death.
Mm-hmm.
Because there ain't no necessity of death. You can preserve your heart if you avoid stress, but those things have to be done in the environments that I've already mentioned. In the Himalayas are ideal for that place, or the Caucasus. Stalin, who was born in Caucasus as well, as he wanted to.
Peter, what's the significance of, or not the significance, but why couldn't somebody apply these techniques, anywhere? Or I mean, I'm sure they can, but what's the significance of the Himalayas and the Caucasus? Because it not to over, I mean, what you're talking about, it can't be overstated how important it is to removing the fear associated with death, and fear with a capital F. It's really the fear of death is if when governments understand this, that most people, I mean, fear is rooted in the fear of dying, what happens when we die, and so many people are under the illusion that when they die that they cease to exist, that is the end. And I mean, governments manipulate people by using this tool of the fear of death. So what you're describing, you're not only the extension of our lives to almost immeasurable lifetimes, but you're also taking away the mystery of what happens when we die, and that is that this idea of becoming a light being. We're always coming back to this idea of light, and the light that everything is ultimately composed of. Everything is ultimately composed of light. So we really can't overstate the importance of this of what you're talking about here. That it's removing the fear of death. And yeah, so it's kind of circling back to. I'm still kind of figuring that. I'm still forming this in my mind here. I'm processing what you're sharing, and I see so many reasons for optimism and so many reasons but I mean, I keep on circling back to the idea of the removal of the fear of death, because so much that keeps people in paralysis in this life, and that allows them to be molded and played like silly putty by governments is based upon people's fear of death. So I just wanted to state that for the record. But at this point, I guess I want to circle back to what makes the Himalayas and the Caucasus such an important location to practice what you've been sharing with here.
I just wanna agree with you and to share that it's the government and the church.
And the church, sure. Oh, no doubt about it. They're hand in hand. They are a marriage. Yeah. Yeah.
They count, actually. They count on people's fear of the separation from the bodily system, and they count on their lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
They keep
That's why
them
this
in
is so
the
what you were,
liberty.
I mean, and Peter, I guess I come back to the point that you're putting like one insight after another. There are so many insights, it's just an avalanche of insights. So I kind of feel like it's my job to make a summary of what you're sharing, because there are so many extraordinary points you're making one after another, that I don't want to get the overall message lost. And that is that this is an extraordinarily optimistic information that you're sharing. I mean, this, like I said, our title of our show is The Business of Esoteric Knowledge and Wisdom, and how so much of this knowledge and wisdom has been intentionally suppressed and kept from us. And we really can't overstate the importance of the information that you're sharing here. And I keep saying it again, and it does so much work to eradicate, fear with a capital F. So I applaud you. Thank you. What I'm saying is thank you. Yeah.
Well, thank you, my friend. Always here for you. I mean, this is a great show for real. I mean, we're getting into people's hearts, not only minds. I mean, that's a great thing to share the knowledge, because people, I guess, were thirsty. Like I was thirsty. I'm always thirsty about knowledge, and I think that when they finish their jobs, the daily tasks that the robots will soon be doing, they'll be able to, as we've concluded in our previous shows, to devote themselves to their own spiritual work, because there is the difference between religiousness and spirituality. The religiousness is something I define as the constant attempt of quenching the thirst of a still unknown but unsatiable, unrecognizable God, to whom is never enough of praising and kneeling.
Yeah.
And the spirituality instead.
And the caveat, Peter, the caveat is that God's ways are just so mysterious and beyond us that it's like the height of arrogance for us to even question it, and which is so disgusting. I mean, it just fills me with contempt, this idea that we are such peons that how dare we even question, the order of things, particularly on this planet. But I mean, it's that overarching umbrella caveat that, who is man to even begin to question the ways of this unfathomable God? So yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I always say to people, hey, come on, I mean, go to an anthill and just take a look upon the ants, the spatial structure and their body organization and their social organization, and so get the essence of the information, of knowledge about ants. If you get the totality, completeness about the information of the ants, you're good. But don't try to enter into the situation where you can comprehend God or gods, because
your wife, not to interrupt Peter, but your wife.
That's my wife. Yeah, because God or gods remain unrecognizable, incomprehensible.
And that's simply not true. And what we're talking about here, I mean, we're revealing the fact that that's simply not true. That we have ways, and there's knowledge for us to understand.
Mention God in this moment.
Yeah.
I appear on the door.
Oh yeah. When we mentioned God, my wife entered the door. She stepped into the house. So yeah, she's the God in this house for now.
It's me.
It's not me. Yeah. I'm the highest herald angel. She's the supreme over here. So yeah, I just want to say, yeah, what we're doing here is the spirituality, because the religiousness goes towards the deities or gods who are unsatiable, and the spirituality, everything I attain or everything I achieve goes towards myself and towards my own development. So I'm not religious in a strict way of thinking. I'm spiritual, and I'm sure that you are standing
And you make a great point, Peter. Not the deity's appetites are insatiable. Nothing makes them happy. I mean, it's like their answer to everything is, okay, I just want more. I mean, it's never
Oh, yeah.
enough for them. I mean, you can't grovel on your knees long enough to appease the gods. And
This is the perfect opportunity to mention one of our favorites, favorite ones books it's entitled Human Race Stop Kneeling Anymore. It's been written by David Icke, or Get Off Your Knees, or I ensure that I know the
Human
exact.
Race, Get Off Your Knees, the lion.
Get Off Your Knees, yeah. And it has the great blue lion depicted on its surface. I've seen the German edition of that book as well.
Oh, I have the English version. Once I'll show it, and I'll show you here. Right here in my bookshelf.
Oh yeah.
I actually have an original print by the illustrator Neil Haig hanging in my living room. But there it is.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's great, because the lion is awakening. It needed for him so long too, but he finally is doing. Okay, you asked me why the mountain reefs, the high altitudes, such like the Himalayas.
Oh yeah. Why is the Himalayas so important?
Well, first of all, because I've noticed that the lack of oxygen is something that produces the life sustainability, in spite of the thinking of the majority. Because when you're in the high altitudes like those, you actually miss and lack the air, supplies, like you and I are having now, in vast quantities. So I'm getting into understanding how the lack of the oxygen, the air, particularly the oxygen among its elements, is making the contribution to the creating conditions inside the cells that can uplift their sustainability and resilience, and that they can start to function on a higher vibratory level, so that each, when each body cell is functioning on a higher vibratory level, you have the totality of the histomaterials that are consistent of those cells functioning differently. So many illnesses and stress are simply erased that way. And let's not forget that the Caucasus and Himalayas are the very high altitudes, nevertheless. And I've been to the Caucasus, of course. I haven't lived there, and I haven't been to the Himalayas, but I will go there probably, definitely. And there are, in Georgia, for example, there are certain villages and areas, the countrysides mostly, that are remote, from the bigger cities, like the capital is. And you have the elders who really live over 100 years, 120, 123, 125, 128, 30, and so on. So Stalin, who was sick and tired with his life of the high priest of the USSR's politics, the government wanted to get into his retirement over there. But actually, he was prevented because Berry had poisoned him with the rat venom, namely the cyanide. So, but he really was introduced as he was meeting those people whose life esteem was as twice as or as twice as bigger than the average ones. So I knew an elder who was from Dagestan, and he died, I think, 4 years ago, and he was 129 years old. Can you imagine it? His name was Mahmoud Darbanov or something like that. I think he was either Chechen or an Ingush. But in Dagestan, you have over 40 languages. They don't comprehend each other. Practically in each new village, you have another language spoken. So the Russian is the language that unites every of them. I was listening to the most of those languages and am able to speak, in very few of them, but Georgian is the best among them. That's the interior of that's the other side of the Great Caucasus region, the Central Caucasus. I'm speaking about North Caucasus now. So, and those languages are fascinating, which is totally another subject for me as a linguist. They're fascinating because they don't belong anywhere. They belong to the Dagestani branch of the languages, So they are not relatable to almost any other one. So yeah, those are not the Indo-European ones. So that person
that's highly unusual.
system.
That's highly unusual that tribes would survive that long in such small numbers that they wouldn't be wiped out by a neighboring tribe. That in and of itself, the fact that there are so many small tribes, little villages that have retained their culture and their language without being wiped out and absorbed by a larger tribe. That's amazing.
So,
and you're right, it would be for another subject, but that in and of itself is amazing.
So Russia is certainly a factor of peacemaking over there. I even spoke to many of them, the peasants who later on became my friends, many of them, not everybody. And, of course, I spoke in Russian with them. So they agreed. Mm-hmm. Now in the 21st century, after the warfare are past, they agreed that the Russia is the factor of peacemaking over there, because like it was said in Vladimir Zhirinovsky's book entitled "The Last Conquering of the South," which I read in the past century, by the way, and it opened my eyes towards the geopolitics. So Russia is somebody who unites the tribes over there, because it would certainly come up to an outburst of warfare opposite. So imagine that person who was practicing the old religions and in the environment, where it was Islam or Christianity. I have remembered from his relatives that I met that beside practicing those religions, so it was going to churches and to mosques. There is one more, a bigger reason for that, because he was working hard, to the very last week of his life, and he was 129 years old. It's been described in his passport. It was the holder of the Russian passport. He was born in the Tsarist imperial Russia, and of course he mentioned garlic as one of the factors for boosting the body cells and their functioning. And I also love garlic as well. So
I do too.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's why probably I wasn't attacked by a vampire sooner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so this is kind of a discrepancy with what we are standing pro, and this is the overtaking of human hard labor by the AI, because I just said, as I've been told, that he was working hard until this last very moment. So, like in everything, we have the two sides, because the structure of the consciousness and the creation, which comes out of that consciousness, is bipolar. So maybe we can discuss in our further shows more about the potential negative consequences of missing and lacking labor, But you can always maintain the physical exercises. You don't have
Not
because
Peter.
you're not
Peter.
forced.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. I was just going to be. I wanted to throw. I wanted to bring this up before I lost my train of thought, and
No problem.
that it was with Nikola Tesla. Was Nikola Tesla also an alchemist? Because I know you.
Oh, thank you for that question.
Yeah,
Because
I wanted to before I lost it, because there were, like I said, there were so many insights one after another, and I'm following the story, but I for some reason that was still kind of sticking in my head, and I wanted to introduce it now, I guess.
well, Nikola Tesla was the superb alchemist. He was the greatest connoisseurs of the alchemy and the alchemical practices. Why? Because he was able to produce produce the matter in Colorado Springs by the usage of his transformer, and he was creating the light bulbs, the light, the light spheres, the lightnings. Sorry, bullshit, not the light bulbs. I wanted to say the spherical lightnings. And very few of the scientists, like the Carr brothers in the U.S., are able to produce them today. And they are those spherical lightnings that he was producing in his lab in Colorado Springs, which was recently bought by a nanny, by a grandmother, by a ridiculously small price. Nobody has done anything useful with it. So he was doing that by special treatment of the items included in the aperture of his transformer, for high frequencies, right, in the Colorado Springs, and they were made of plasma, So a light sphere, a sphere of lightning, sorry, that's just the emphasized and enlarged electron. It's hardly comprehensible, but that's the way it is. So you have a field of plasma inside the field. So they were kind of vanishing in the space-time continuum in the concrete field in front of his eyes. And he was the only person that is known to me until this day that was capable of holding them on his palms.
Wait, Peter, I want to, because I am certainly new to this subject, so I'm looking to get a little more amplification here because it's extraordinary. But when you said about things disappearing, what exactly is this? Well, one, 2 points, I guess. One, what was disappearing, and two, what was Tesla able to hold? I mean, you may have mentioned it, but I kind of got lost in it because it is requiring a lot of effort for me to follow it because this is all new information. But if you could recap for me and maybe our audience as well, one, what was disappearing, and two, what was he able to hold for the first time?
Well, he was able to hold.
Yeah,
no problem. You're welcome. The sphere lightnings, like the nature produces the lightnings itself. It's all about comprehending the geobio-thermal systems, and the planet Terra, meaning the Earth, is one of them. So it was considering the entire planet, which is tiny in its essence, as a condensator. So and as a conductor as well, because that's the way he was able to create the geotectonic outbursts and disorders in certain fields. Like he has discharged that large amount of energy in Siberia in 1908, because it was Tesla. It was not a meteorite explosion or a UFO crash or anything like that. It's totally an opposite what the considerings of Kapitsa, the Russian engineer who said something totally different. Any Teslan engineer would support this statement here and go for it. So he said, all right, in the Colorado Springs, I have noticed and I have captured the signs of intelligence and the presence of intelligence and the scriptures of the float of electricity in my lab, period. So what does it mean? That means that the ionosphere that is surrounding the Terra planet, it goes 50 miles, roughly 50 miles over the summer, and it goes to 80 miles over the winter period. So it changes its altitude. That means that the ionosphere surrounding the Earth is the brain of the planet.
I was just gonna ask you, yeah, because you mentioned intelligence, and he saw that there was, he noticed, he noticed like the language of intelligence in energy. And I'm saying it in a stumbling, very basic way, but that sounds essentially what you're saying is that there was an intelligent language embedded in energy.
Oh yeah.
Is that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. So the streams and
you call it a brain. It's like a brain, right? Or a brain or a mind surrounding the planet.
Exactly. So this is exactly not only something that corresponds to, but the exact definition of the universal informatic field around.
And this kind of ties into Carl Jung. Carl Jung explained it more philosophically and psychologically with the collective unconscious, the collective mind, the hive mind. And what Tesla is doing, here is showing scientific empirical evidence for what Jung was looking at abstractly. If I hate to put words in his mind, I'm just thinking out. I'm kind of figuring it out as I go along and just thinking out loud. But what Carl Jung, what I'm interpreting as was explaining abstractly, Tesla was able to show concrete empirical evidence for this.
That's exactly where it is. Yeah.
And again, just to pause, that in and of itself, it will blow anyone's mind, right? I mean, that in and of itself is like, holy shit.
Oh yeah, we don't have to put the dynamite sticks into the people's brains anymore because these information are enough to. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm joking, of course. And this is the field that surpasses and overcomes the field of religion and philosophy because it's physics. As well as know this, it's physics of the consciousness and the physics of the consciousness stretching around the Earth.
And Peter, a recurring theme we find is that ancient spiritual knowledge and wisdom is being corroborated by the cutting edge of scientific discovery. We find that as a recurring theme here. And also Tesla used those same spiritual techniques of meditation to access to access the information embedded in the ionosphere. So I guess what we keep on finding, we again and again, it's that recurring theme of ancient spiritual wisdom being corroborated by what is modern day, scientific discovery that's on the cutting edge of scientific discovery. So we're finding them to be they're two different languages for the same thing.
Oh yeah, and not only by the influence of text, but also the human being has started to degenerate, in certain moments, by the misusage and of the great knowledge, because certain civilizations and their members were having to direct influx and the direct way of acceptance of the knowledge, because it was directly corresponding tautologically to the state of being, the way it was, and the relation between the inner state of mind with the situation in the nature and cosmos was one to 1. It was statistically speaking totally corresponding one to each other. So later on, you've noticed that excellent, by the usage of by the usage of technology in the industrial era, and especially by suppressing those knowledge, that knowledge by the church, and by lowering the pineal gland, meaning the third eye, which is crucial in this thing, humans,
not least of which, like the addition of fluoride in water, calcifies the pineal gland. So I mean, our governments have been taking, strategic steps
the more materialistically oriented they were becoming, they were losing the point of having that ancient knowledge. So this is exactly the reason why the occult sciences are called the Hermetic sciences. Ciencia hermetica. It ain't possible to be, achieved and obtained and comprehended by anybody in any moment. That's why it's called the Hermetic sciences, because they are structured in a hermetically closed system of knowledge that can be penetrated by a clear mind, by an open mind, like we are.
Yeah.
So, but my point of view is that even an average person can enter into the occult sciences, but with certain, preparation and certain state of mind. So, and it has to get clear-mindedly into.
And that's a great point, Peter. What people think is, a lot of people are under the assumption that you have to be that you have to be some genius or that you're some special, unique, extraordinary, just genius to tap into this, and that it's something reserved for some super elite segment of society. But I don't believe that at all. And I think one of the greatest illustrations from history, again, is I always circle back to Plato and Plato's, I guess, his theory of recollection, and how it really speaks to children, where most people, you'd find there are very few people that would dispute the fact that most children are geniuses. I mean, how many times are you around a kid who's 3, 4, 5 years old, and something will come out of their mouth, and it will be the most succinct, brilliant, in haiku form or poetics, or it's just something like that where you're like, wow, that kid is a genius. And it's because it's true. Most people recognize the genius in children, and it's not until they are put into the school system where that genius is just driven into the very depths of their psyche. And I guess what I'm saying is it's something that everyone's born with. And I think it also points to what we're doing here, is that I think people in general don't realize what potential they have, and that it's so much of the school system globally has just driven that innate genius that all children have. Almost all children have. It has driven it into the furthest, deepest recesses of their psyche. And I guess what we're trying to do is waking people up to that. Waking people up to the potential that I think most people have. I really do believe it's not something that is at the far reaches of the universe, and only a handful of us are able to access it. I mean, for whatever reason, you and I think that we for some reason, maybe there's some genetic component with us that where we were a nerd to the rattlesnake bite of the indoctrination of formal education. But what we are talking about here is that what we are discussing here is open to so many people. I would say the great majority of people have this potential to tap into it. Again, I'm kind of circling around to what we're talking about here is incredibly optimistic. I mean, there are so many reasons to be optimistic of the present and the future.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with you, my friend. Schopenhauer said once that each child is a genius, and each genius is a child.
Sure. I mean, before I wanted to continue on, and what Plato said is this idea of contrasting, that all children are always making comparisons And when you stop and think about it, it's a very sophisticated form of intelligence that almost all children have. This making comparisons, a comparison between like who's older, who's taller, who's fatter, who's skinnier, who's younger, who's older, is just comparing animals and just shapes, and they're always making comparisons, and it's a sophisticated analysis that almost all children have. So I apologize for interrupting your train of thought on Schopenhauer, but I just wanted to throw that out there again. It's one of the best illustrations of genius that almost every child has, and people lose track of that as they get older. So I mean, sorry about that, but I wanted you to continue your thought on Schopenhauer before I.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Yeah, well, he said that, and he was right, because the genius preserves what's called the homo ludens inside of a psyche, meaning the man who plays, the player man, homo ludens. There is a book entitled the same way, and the child is a bearer of knowledge. It ain't that true that it's been
Peter, there's a lot of noise in the
true.
background. I want to be able to hear everything you're saying here, but there's like a lot of tapping or something. So I just wanted to hear your point here.
Yeah, we're here in the alchemical laboratory. We're kind of preparing the lunch. We are transforming the rough matters into the edible
I hear you.
substances.
Yeah.
So we're kind of doing the alchemy process over here.
Sure,
The salt, the elements for cooking, beans and so on. That's an alchemy process. And then our body cells are going to do the rest of the alchemy.
They will, yeah.
That we were just discussing about.
That's a great point. And all those processes they're a form of magic. It really is a form of magic. The way our body transforms food into energy is a form of magic.
It's a kind of magic. Yeah. All right. So Freddie would agree with us, definitely. So yeah, I want to say that
so again, Schopenhauer. We're talking about Schopenhauer and children and playing, and how that is related to the genius that is just about everyone, I think.
Yeah, and just in order to illustrate that point, a friend of mine has told me once that one of his children, basically his son, who's 40 years old now, when he was a 5-year-old boy, he, exclaimed a brilliant idea, which says essentially, the way you are, that's how your God is. Meaning who you are, that's exactly who your God is. So that's a brilliant idea that none of the mystics, not even Meister Eckhart or Jacob Boehme or anybody else would be able to formulate that way, because they were adults.
But a 5-year-old can. But a 5-year-old can.
But a 5-year-old one can. That doesn't come up from the books.
It's an innate knowledge. It's knowledge that child has before it came to the temporal plane of existence. I mean, the child was born with that.
And why is that so? Yeah. Why is that so? Yeah. Why did great wisdom come there into the child's mind? Because they've recently come from the area, the place, where there ain't no form and shape in the classical way of thinking, and they are in a better connection, the direct meaning connection with their inner being. So they came from the place where they can preserve knowledge and be able to share it. And later on, after the puberty, after the entering the adolescence, the pineal gland is lowering. So there are certain yoga techniques or certain yogas, because it's many of us, only one, that can preserve the existence and function of the pineal gland, because that's the exact way how the elders, meaning the past civilizations, like the Atlantis civilization. Basically, we're using to achieve the goal of getting the knowledge. So later on, the devotees were, organizing that knowledge into the scriptures, into the deciphered and the encrypted books, using Latin or Greek. So that's what we now call the esoteric literature. That's the organization of knowledge and printing that onto the parchment or papyri or books by combination of 30 or 25, 24 letters of the alphabet. I mean, depending on where they were and what language they spoke. So now you said that it's widely spread and available to the majority, and I said yes. I have large libraries, only going to get bigger and bigger while I'm here, but and you'll love books too. But you can download so many of the great alchemical works simply from the internet today. So the idea of the free information is finally achieved.
Mm-hmm.
The information is free, and we are entering the scientific era, the scientific age, and the space age. So the point of my book, the mythologies of techno world, and the point of your book, the musings of Delapue, is that one of the points for sure is that the occult and esoteric ideas stand behind the technology.
Yeah. They corroborate each other. They're telling the same story with a different language.
They're perplexing each other.
They are completely woven together.
Saturated by another one.
They never. We realize that they never contradict each other. They really don't. They don't contradict each other.
Yeah. That's exact. Yeah, and also, I want to say, you mentioned the school system, which is ending now. It's over, of course, because everything will get switched onto the online sector. I'm telling that to my daughter every day. So she believes me because she knows I'm right. And the school system was, because it's past participle, was constantly trying to destroy the genius into the child's mind by organizing it in different systems of rules and doing the tasks which are totally wrong sometimes, by getting the child addicted to the school ringing bell in certain times, which is good, to organize itself and to make certain obligations, to do something, and it's over its life. But it was totally wrong, because the educating system has to slowly but surely get switched on towards the direction of the free knowledge, and the free organizing, and learning what one is pleased to. So the idea of the free university is an excellent idea, because the capitalism is over in its classical sense. And I don't have to look for a professor anymore in order to get the high,
there should. I mean, the gatekeepers are kind of losing their the gatekeepers are no longer having an occupation. I mean, there are, the gatekeepers to the knowledge those guys are gone. They no longer have any power. So you're having this free access to anybody who's inquisitive and has the motivation to seek out information and knowledge. They have the ability to find it without getting past the gatekeepers anymore. And something else, I also wanted to circle back to the point you made about that 5-year-old who made the discovery that all of these philosophers throughout time couldn't make that discovery, and that is that whatever is in our personality it pretty much defines our God or is God. And I think it kind of harkens back to the crux of my book, and that is that there is something so indescribably simple and at the heart of existence, and that is like the question of like what is consciousness. I mean, with so often a lot of people take it for granted that it's just a byproduct of matter or the material world, but it's not, though. I mean, if you find out, you ask yourself, what is consciousness? And I keep circling back to something. There is something. There is a schism at the very heart of existence that is it's so simple, and it's staring us all in the face. And maybe it's by virtue of how simple it really is, and that is losing track of the fact that, you know, consciousness, for lack of a better word, is God, and it's a disembodied spirit that permeates all of existence. Tesla described it as that intelligence that is written into the language of pure energy. But ultimately, what's happening on this in this universe is that there is something that, for lack of a better term, we call it God. I choose to call it infinite, eternal consciousness. I know a term you use for it is the Atman, but there is a personality that exists for all of eternity, in all of infinity. And in order for this infinite personality that I call infinite eternal consciousness with a capital C, in order for it to have any experience, it has to take on these avatar roles that, you know, we are human beings. I mean, but a human being is just an avatar for infinite eternal consciousness to have an experience. And it really is that simple. And maybe that's why I struggle so mightily to explain it to people, because you almost have to be a 5-year-old. You almost have to be any 5-year-old to be able to explain it to an adult, because it's so extraordinarily simple what's going on in our world. You know, there is a sentient being that is not. It doesn't have a body. It is formless. It just simply exists, and it's incredibly neurotic. It has upwards of 8 billion human personalities, but it's God can't get along with himself, I guess is what I'm saying. God is he is the most extraordinarily neurotic entity in the universe, and we are part and parcel of him. And for some reason, he's just always, he's at his own throat. Does that make sense, Peter? I mean, and again, I circle back to the fact that I think it's so extraordinarily simple, it requires a 5-year-old to explain it. Right? I mean,
oh yeah, it does make sense, my friend. You know, your body, your bodiless system is an avatar for the consciousness. Yeah. That's exactly where it is. And the great schism, as we've previously explained in one of our previous shows, is the consequence of seeking experience through the senses of each particular life forms, and each particular life form, where it was a slug or a whale or a squirrel or a microorganism, is because it also has a certain amount of consciousness and life sustainability and organization at a certain level, and each forms of life are the particular expressions of the inner urge of the deep consciousness to create, to express itself. So each particular life forms, whether in this tiny planet or anywhere around, you know, sprinkled around the universe or the multiverses, they don't even have to have the bodiless systems to get sustainable and to function. They are the certain stages of the development of the consciousness. So the more the bodiless system of the species is developed, the more its consciousness is clearer and higher. So it doesn't have to be called the Atman necessarily, because it implicates the religion or something like that. It doesn't have, it's nameless. It doesn't have to have a name.
You're right. It's completely nameless. And the moment we put a name to it, we put a limit to it, and it's limitless.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean,
that's the brilliant idea. Yeah. I was standing.
Yeah, I mean, any description put on it is a limitation. So it's quite ironic. It's a catch-22, because we want to understand it, and as human beings, the best thing we have is language to describe it. But by just the sheer application of language, we are limiting it, and we are in a way kind of pulling away from it. But I get
Yeah,
your point. I mean,
we're
it doesn't
creating.
have a name. There's no name for it. People call it source. They call it whatever, but there really is no name for it.
Yeah, whenever we put a name upon something, that's like putting a yoke of a semantic and semiotic trap,
Yes.
because we're putting it inside of a cage
Yes.
of
Exactly.
meaning, and it ends up meaningless, because
Exactly.
it ends up with meaninglessness,
Mhm.
because it creates a puzzle that is really hard to solve. Okay, so we finally concluded all of the mystical experiences, such like the NDE or the DMT experiences, or even the LSD experiences. If they are properly used, they finally get to the conclusion that I am the consciousness. That means that each form of life, I'm not only focusing here on humans, but each form of life is one with the consciousness. So I would put it this way here: the consciousness is the consciousness, and each of the particular ones, the individual, the individual, each individual consciousness is the awareness, which makes the part and the unity, the part of and the unity with that consciousness. And they're connected, of course. Because each of the atoms, each particular atom or molecule is spiritual in its essence. The quantum physics is the loophole between the two realms, which are permeating each other. And let's make an attempt to define consciousness. I was thinking and ruminating and I was musing for long ago about that topic. So I finally realized that in the terms of the physical science. That proverb which says that when over his 20s, man is a theologian. Mm-hmm. When he enters his 30s, is a metaphysicist, while when he enters his 40s, he's a physicist. So now I'm a physicist. I'm not a theologian or a metaphysicist. I'm a pure physicist. Mm-hmm. So even the field of consciousness belongs to the field of physics, mm-hmm. Physics of consciousness. So I have concluded that the best definition and attempt to define the consciousness of you and or me is that consciousness is the complex of the electromagnetic field that are gifted by the possibility to perceive itself, which are organized, those electromagnetic fields, which are organized by the intern time. And that's the definition that hasn't been provided by anybody in the psychological science, because it hasn't been offered neither by Freud, nor Jung, nor Karen Horney, or Horney. It hasn't been provided by Adler, by nobody. And nevertheless, the main subject of research in the science of psychology and psychiatry is what? It's the soul, or the consciousness, right? Mm-hmm. The particular psyche and its healing, or making it sick. So how can we heal something that we don't know the proper definition for? Right? So we have to first focus on the attempts and try to comprehend what a consciousness would be. So this is the.
Could you repeat? Could you recap that for me one more time? Could you recap that for me one more time? Your definition of consciousness.
Oh yeah, a consciousness. Okay.
And are we talking about like consciousness with a big C?
No, there is
Or
the
just us,
consciousness,
you and I, okay.
capitalized C, and there is the awareness, which makes a part of the consciousness, right? And each forms of life are those parts of the consciousness, capitalized C. And that awareness or individual consciousness is the complex, the electromagnetic fields,
Mhm.
which are gifted by the possibility of the self-perceiving, that are self-aware,
Mhm.
and which are those electromagnetic fields united by their intern time.
Mhm.
So that would be consciousness, or the highest proximity of definition of it, because it's the closest attempt to that is at least known to me, and I think that the Tibetans would agree with it,
Mhm.
because their philosophy is physics. Actually, it functions properly on the scientific ways. So once when we realize what is the consciousness, I mean the individual one, we can easily cure up any kind of neurotic or even psychotic issues by simply switching the intern times of the particular one, the electromagnetic system, which is united by the intern time. So that means that we can erase, the engrams which persist as a picture, as an image. We can switch it. We can change it by another one by simply choosing to switch the positions of photons, because the brain does not suffer from anything, mostly those are the ego maladies, the ego trips that are connected to the trauma, that has been catched up within the incarnation. And we said, why do we incarnate? Because it's afraid of entering the light due to two factors. First of all, it's unknown to the seeker. He doesn't know where is a large ocean of light in front of it. And the second one is that he remembers the past situations that are known to him, like pleasure or even pain, because he agrees to the possibility of pain when he enters the zygote, when he chooses the uterus, the womb, because that's the way to incarnate. And so once, as we've said numerous times over our shows, once you get into the realm of shape and form, you open up yourself for a certain possibility of injury or hurt. It's over here. So one of the injuries, many can leave a trauma. It means a wound in Greek. So I think that the science of psychology and psychiatry has reached its pinnacle in its traditional ways. So now it has to focus solely on physics, the physics of consciousness, because it has to cure up the diseases in a totally different way, not by doing the drugs and offering medications, which only sedate the victim of the pharmaco.
And Peter, it almost sounds like, I mean, most of neuroses, excuse me, most of neuroses are kind of akin to just like a piano that's out of tune, or a guitar that needs to be tuned. And it really is a matter of figuring out how to tune those disordered frequencies in the brain in order to remove so much of psychological trauma from the mind. It's really, it's an imbalance in the frequency, or it's a disharmony in the frequencies of the brain, the vibration. So it's a matter of tuning the brain to the harmonious frequencies to eradicate so much of.
Or you can even exclude certain certain image, certain frequency out of your field of perception. You can even disclude dissipate the venomous, the potentially harmful data or information, the image out of your electromagnetic field that your consciousness is defined by, that it captures. Or instead, you can extend your particular individual consciousness beyond that, like it's been described in so-called PEAN, PEAN techniques that have been overtaken by Slavinsky, one of the esotericists who does the same things of healing the particular psyche. And the original of the idea came from the Scientology, which has been utilized by L. Ron Hubbard, as well as we know, but he wasn't the inventor of it. Instead, it was another person who invented the Scientology and the cleansing, therapy, and many of the even Hollywood celebrities who work for the film and entertainment factory, like John Travolta, meaning, they have passed through the complete cleansing process. So therefore they look the way they look, because the cleansing process is something very useful. I'm standing proof that maybe it can have negative implications like anything, but it's very good because you remove a lot of the unnecessary burden. You finally in further stages of the cleansing process, you realize that certain things that were representing a burden, namely meaning the neurotic expressions or something, the unnecessary futile inner struggles, were representing something that you could always turn out to be your weapon, to be your inner strength. But not everybody are aware of this. So that's why the Scientology and the cleansing process mostly serve for, so it's good in its essence. So the Scientology has approached the way of healing that I'm telling about now the most, at most, because it's the physics of consciousness and the way of treating it properly. And that's the way of the inner alchemy. It's worth you mentioning. I almost forgotten. That's what I call the algebra of psyche, the algebra of the soul. And the Kabbalists, the Kabbalah practitioners, they do that. The ancestors, some of the ancestors of my grandfather, who was Polish, they were the rabbis, so they were the connoisseurs of Kabbalah, certain parts of Kabbalah. So they were practicing it, So they knew that they knew how to deal with that inner alchemy of the soul, how to organize the images inside the psyche in order for them to function properly, not to disturb or harm, but to function as a weapon or to simply be erased. The Kabbalists do that. The algebra of the mind. And that's the psychoengineering by application of the strictly alchemical manners, means.
And ultimately, I think in the beginning, you mentioned that all of our alchemy is its ultimate objective is to transform us into bodies of light, right? You mentioned something at the beginning of our channel where about I'm forgetting what the term you used was, but was it optimum magna? I know that's not the exact term, but you said something. You said ultimately. I'm sorry. Come again.
Opera magna.
Opera magna,
Opera
and its ultimate objective is to transform us into bodies of light.
Oh yeah, because in the yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right.
I guess maybe it might be a good place to wrap up this episode. But I mean, just if we want to recap that point from the beginning of the episode, was that the goal of alchemy is to have us become bodies of light.
Oh yeah, because in the because in the end, and the lowest point, our bodies are consisted of the pure light.
Yes, because everything is composed of light.
Yeah, and the vibration, nevertheless, of course, and even the atoms and the space, in our bodies or anywhere else in the field, they mutually communicate and contact to each other by the mediation of light. So the atoms communicate with each other by the usage of light, because that's the medium, the interface that they use for the mutual communication.
Would it be fair? Would it be, Peter? Would it be fair to say that even light is the building blocks of atoms? I mean, or is that too? Is that too much of a speculation,
well,
or do you think that light is even smaller than like the quarks and the directions that ultimately everything in the universe is composed of subatomic particles of light?
Oh yeah, definitely. Really, everything is the light. So it's not a wonder, and it is the biggest.
Like it almost sounds whimsical, but it's not, right? It almost sounds like whimsical, but it's not. I mean, we're talking literally here too. Everything is composed of light.
Yeah, and regarding the opera magna,
yeah,
it has been described that way in the great book, the part of the opus written by Ramon Lull, or Ramon Llull. That's where it's called in Catalan, because it was Catalan from La Palma de Mallorca. Of course, I've been there once in Spain on the Balear archipelago, and I've been to that city of Palma, and so I didn't even know that I was in the vicinity of this house, meaning this birthplace. I mean, it's not making a pilgrimage or something, the way of worshiping an adept of the occult and esoteric sciences. No, but it's when you're in the path of the inner spiritual adventure, everything that is covered up by that path, and which is a part of that path of yours, is considered a temple on that route. So it's like in your life, each of the topics and references in your book represent the inner temples of discovery on the path of your inner adventure. So this is exactly why do you want, or why do I want to visit the Himalayas? Not only to go there, but to explore those inner temples, and to search them in the outer ones, and to explore the nature and to try the food and everything else. So yeah, that's regarding Ramon Lull, or Llull. And yeah, we have to, maybe we should expand the topic about Le Comte de Saint-Germain, later on, Count of Saint-Germain later on, because there are the and maybe we should conclude with it. There are the evidences that people were seeing him literally, not reincarnated, but in the same physical body. No matter how silly this can sound, but we are here to expand, you know, the way of thinking and to change it. So to make each one to think differently as they were taught, because it was mostly wrong. And you know, this is why the school system is wrong. It's ending up, you know, because the Tibetans, they learn their children to read the other people's thoughts when they're 5.
Yeah.
Look what we teach our children. They learn how to levitate. They learn how to balance their incarnations and how to reincarnate better, or how to not reincarnate at all, which is the best to my recollection. And that's the point.
Yeah.
Or how to do the teleportation even, or how to how to use certain yoga systems in order to be able to sustain without the usage of food.
Yeah, I mean, when you can limit people's idea of what is possible, I mean, that's when you got them. That's when you have them in that mind prison, and it becomes so difficult to free people from that mind prison for the rest of their lives. But when you tell them that the realm of possibility is so small, and it just then they just laugh at anything else. Like they'll laugh at what you're talking about. We're teaching children when they're 5 years old to levitate and developing their powers of telepathy.
That's what they do.
People will scoff at that out of hand, and the reason they scoff at it is because it's been drilled into their head. The limitations of possibility, you know. And
okay, just make them click on our and subscribe to our show, my friend. They don't even
click on the subscribe button. Yeah.
Yeah, there's bigger amount of,
because what we're talking about in so many ways is what we're essentially saying is that within the realm of possibility, that there's the potential for all possibility. Everything that you can imagine is possible, and people are like, nah, that can't be true, but it is. And the more we study history, the more we study what we're talking about, alchemy, the more we look at AI and the theory of simulation, and we're just scratching the surface here. But the more we investigate into the nature of reality and the nature of the universe, we realize that everything is possible. You know, once we open our minds, everything is possible.
Oh yeah, because you know, one of the biggest secrets is that the existence shouldn't be here where it is. The existence itself is impossible.
Yeah, I mean, why is there something as opposed to nothing?
We still do exist.
Yeah, just the sheer fact that we exist.
Still do exist.
Yeah, mathematically, it shouldn't be possible. Yeah.
Yeah, because the law of the entropy is something that pushes everything downstairs below. And in spite of that, the forces of life are somehow finding their paths and going towards the peak and against the law of the entropy, the third, which can be, you know, consisted and explained by the third law of the thermodynamics. You know, the entropy represents a whirlpool, a maelstrom, and inside the core of the third thermodynamic law. You know, so mostly the entire science of physics, the medicine, you know, the biology, the biochemistry, you know, the medications, all of that, even psychology and psychiatry, it has to be replaced and changed. And that's the era just the exact moment that we're living in. We're living in the era of the great quantum leap and jump ahead, and we're changing the stuff. including the science itself, by changing our psyche, the state of our mind.
And again, and what you were describing is we are moving into a new age, and in order for us to get to this new age, there are going to be birth pains and there are going to be death agonies from this dying world, and that kind of that describes what we are experiencing in particular with over the past 2 years with the COVID-19 lockdown and the hoax and all the psychological trauma and misery that has brought along. I mean, that is it's the death agonies of this dying age of misery and conflict and eternal strife. And it all ties back into AI and removing the necessity of human labor. And once we do that, it's going to render the reptilian brain obsolete, and it's going to open up a whole new world of possibility.
Oh yeah, those were the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Of the things
Yeah.
going on that way. And personally, to my recollection, those were not the worst years. Those were not even the bad years, because I wrote 2 books of poetry over that period. And I have arranged, many of the encounters with the online encounters. With the hemp investors, we'll discuss with you more about later. And that's it. Yeah, somebody, has had to say to people, stop going to your job anymore, or don't do it that way anymore. You'll be focusing on working online from your home from this moment on, because there are the strict evidences of the existence of one planetary government, which isn't to be consisted of the tycoons necessarily, or the oligarchs. No, but instead they're just the members of the spiritual brotherhood. The Russian esotericists and lamas and the elders, not necessarily from the Orthodox monastic orders, but the elders who are beyond the religion. They are the connoisseurs of theosophy, the bearers of the theosophical ideas. The KGB is ran by the elders who are in the Orthodox Church. That's Putin's lineage, and they are the elders. Okay, but the GRU is the different, intelligence service that's run by the theosophists, who, and both of them correspond with White Lotus and the Red Tongue and the Green Dragon in China, and the triads or something different. They're organized based on the money, and that's certainly for the upcoming shows.
All right, Peter. Well, I think that we have covered more than enough ground for one episode, and we've got a pretty good idea of where we want to go next time. And I guess this might be a good place to break until next time. What do you think?
I think the same, my friend. Yeah, well, we should maybe talk a little bit. We should maybe say a little bit about the account of Saint Germain in particular over the last shows, because it deserves that.
All right. Well, that would be a great place to pick up next time. Perhaps this Sunday.
Yeah, probably this Sunday as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Peter.
Wrote that.
All right. All right. Well, then I guess I bid you adieu until the weekend.
Oh yeah. Where we got today? Is it's Thursday? Yeah.
Today's Thursday. Yeah.
Weekend sounds the best. Sounds great.
All right. Okay, Peter. I will see you this weekend then.
Yeah. See you this weekend, my friends.
All right. I'll see you. Have a great afternoon.
Happy to see you again soon.
Bye. See ya.